Thank you for joining us for Homelessness in Texas. Our struggles, our successes, our future. As President and CEO of Texas Homeless Network, it's my privilege to kick off this event of amazing speakers from across the state and nation as they talk about their accomplishments and what's needed to end homelessness. And I want to say that we asked our speakers not to speak on behalf of THN, but instead to speak on behalf of themselves, their agencies, and their communities, and most importantly, to speak from the heart. So what you'll hear from our speakers today are their thoughts about homelessness and what it's going to take to end it. So while their words will be their own, you'll know that we share the same common commitment, and that's to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. Texas Homeless Network does that through providing education, technical assistance, and advocating on behalf of all of our Texas communities. You know, this year has been a challenging one for THN and all of our partners across the state. We have faced destructive hurricanes, a devastating pandemic, and racial justice movements that have pushed community conversations toward a more equitable future. I've been amazed at your resilience, your perseverance, and your drive throughout this past year. Your compassion, your commitment, and your courage leave me humbled and in awe of what we can accomplish and sure of our continued ability to do so. With election results just a week away, I want to say that no matter the result, I know that our community is filled with people that have the compassion to help others. And we see that through our partners' work, support, and empowerment of all Texans, including but not limited to those that are LGBTQ, those that are undocumented, and those fleeing domestic violence. I'm proud of Texas, and I'm hopeful in our collective power to create a better tomorrow. Beyond hope, I'm committed to making that better tomorrow a reality. Our future depends on it. That's why THN is holding this event, and that's why I'm asking you to lend your support to our advocacy efforts. Over this past year, we've advocated to defend the rights of those that are unhoused. We've helped communities to ensure that they receive the funding they need to help people experiencing homelessness, especially during this pandemic. And we've ensured access to people who need services, no matter who they are. With this work comes great cost. So any support you're able to give us in this effort will make a better future for Texans experiencing homelessness. Join us today and countless of other Texans that want to make this state better and that see no reason why people should experience homelessness. Your support is critical and this work is crucial. And I want to thank you for that in advance. Now, with that said, I know you want to hear from all of our great speakers, but before we get to them, I want to introduce one of my colleagues, a THN team member, Linda Zhang, who's going to lead us in a moment of silence.
Good afternoon, everyone. We at Texas Homeless Network recognize and appreciate all of the hard work and successes experienced across the state by banding together through these difficult times. Still, we recognize the continued impacts of COVID-19 and racial injustices in our communities, in Texas, and across the country. We invite you to join us in a moment of silence and reflection for those lost and affected by COVID-19 and racial injustices, and those lost on the streets while experiencing homelessness. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Andrea Omojola, and I get the privilege of serving at Open Door. When I came to Lubbock 2 years ago to work with Open Door, one thing that I immediately started praying for was to see community efforts across agencies blossom. There's so many individual agencies doing really great work on behalf of our neighbors who are experiencing homelessness and poverty. But what often happens is that we get so entrenched in our work that we forget to reach across the street and see how we can help. There's no one to blame for that. The work we do is hard and intense, and sometimes it's all that you can do to keep your own head up. And then COVID-19 hit. I have to say, though, that one of the bright sides of this pandemic and the answer to my original prayer is seeing agencies work together, crossing the theoretical street to work with one another and to keep our communities safe. Were there disappointments? Sure, but there are also highlights. It was in these moments that we at Open Door saw agencies like our local Salvation Army reaching across the street. Even with a limited team, they worked diligently to provide meals in non-conventional ways and coordinated with us at Open Door and other agencies to ensure that our neighbors could shelter in place along with the rest of the city. Because Open Door is not an overnight shelter, there was not a real way for our neighbors to shelter in place. But with the help of them and payroll protection plan, we were able to hire more staff, extend our hours, and create that safe space beyond the norm. This has been a season of so many sad stories, and so I just wanted to take a minute and share that there's hope in the midst of the sadness and remind each and every one of us the power of working together. I mean, isn't that what THN strives to do? Create ways for us to be connected even when all we want to do is put our head down and do the work, or when it's just too busy to reach across the street. When we look at the new normal, it's my hope and my prayer that we will take into this next season, no matter what the administrations locally and federally are doing, that we'll take the heart to reach and the energy to do so with consistency. We've got this, y'all. We're in it together. So be encouraged as we all endeavor to end homelessness and help people live, thrive, and belong.
I'm Joca Marquez, City Councilwoman in San Marcos, Texas. We deal with a lot of issues of homelessness in our community, especially with the high cost of living in this area. Before the pandemic, we had a lot of issues of invisible homelessness, meaning that in our city, we don't see very many individuals out in the street panhandling. We actually have a panhandling ordinance in place. There are no affordable living options for individuals. I've lived in San Marcos for 8 years now and have yet to come an affordable place to live. Rent costs are outrageous. People like myself are being priced out of our homes. On January 23rd of 2020, we held our first point-in-time count in Hays County. We wanted to know what the scope of the problem was in order to begin addressing it. Out of the 102 individuals surveyed, 80% of them currently had a job but were homeless because they couldn't afford to pay their rent. There wasn't one individual with his young son who was evicted for being late 1 month of rent. There was another, an educated man, who had a job but couldn't afford his rent. This situation clearly debunks the prevailing narrative that individuals experiencing homelessness simply don't want to work, and this is far from the truth. In our point-in-time count, we also found that 48% of those individuals surveyed were unsheltered, meaning they were either sleeping under the bridge, or several that I spoke to were sleeping in their cars and trucks. A lot of them needed access to take a shower, and again, the pandemic, we had to close our rivers here in San Marcos, and individuals experiencing homelessness who used the river to bathe no longer had access to it. We closed city facilities, including the library, included the resources that they needed, like a computer or a bathroom, or simply a place to provide them shelter during the day. We created a homelessness committee in our San Marcos City Council in 2019 to begin the process of allocating resources to social services, such as from the policymaking side. There were several community groups advocating for this issue long before I came on council. We have recognized the need to involve city government, nonprofit organizations, school district, and individuals interested in making a difference. We are fortunate to partner with the Texas Homeless Network in order to access more resources and guidance. My role as a policymaker in the city is to ensure we allocate the necessary funds as part of our city budget to begin addressing issues of homelessness. We can all do our part. Some of us advocate, some of us volunteer, some of us share on social media, some of us donate, some of us policy make. In the end, we are all trying to undo the injustices in our society.
Hello, I'm Nan Roman from the National Alliance to End Homelessness in Washington, D.C. While I wish I could be with you in person today, it really is a pleasure to join the network for this exciting event, even virtually. We come together at a tumultuous and challenging moment in our nation. We have the COVID-19 pandemic, We have the recession, and we have the issues surrounding police violence and racial discrimination. These challenges, as well as homelessness itself, all disproportionately affect people of color. How has homelessness and our approaches changed because of these problems over the past few months? We don't have much data, but it seems that many places have lost shelter beds and are reporting increases in unsheltered homelessness. We know that homeless assistance organizations are under tremendous stress, trying to do more with strained resources. On the positive side, you have done more and moved incredibly fast to respond, especially to the pandemic. You have gotten some additional federal resources, and I hope some private ones as well. And the numbers for some homeless populations, like families, seem to be stable. What lies ahead? Of course, the COVID pandemic will continue, and it is likely to be a while before things are back to normal there. High unemployment will likely continue for the lowest income workers, women, and minorities in particular. The Black Lives Matter and other movements to improve racial equity will, I believe, result in much needed change. The eviction moratorium will eventually end, and unless we get rental assistance money on a stimulus bill, there is likely to be a wave of evictions followed by a wave of homelessness. Not right away, but within 6 to 12 months. Unfortunately, if that happens, state and local governments will be of little help because they're broke. Whether or not the federal government steps up may be determined by which way the election goes. A little grim, but there are also opportunities. The pandemic has put homelessness in a health context. This could help us finally bring healthcare and housing together to solve the problem. There has been a widespread awakening about the role of racism in housing and homelessness, and that's a necessary step in addressing inequality. The real estate market seems to be changing, with record low interest rates, flight in some urban areas, and growing vacancy in hotels, motels, and other commercial property. There may be real opportunities to repurpose commercial buildings in urban areas for housing at much lower costs than new construction. It has been amazing how much better people do in private hotel and motel rooms than in congregate shelter. This could be a time to consider moving to non-congregate shelter for the safety, dignity, and outcomes of those we serve. And of course, we should also devote time to the greater justice issues. We would be much better off, I think, if we took the money we spend on crisis services and devoted it to ensuring that everyone had a decent place to live, healthcare, and food. We also have an opportunity coming up very soon now to help those we serve with one other important thing, and that is to exercise their right to vote. Their well-being can depend on who gets elected. It's also a race equity issue. I hope and urge you to plan now to make sure that everybody you serve who wants to is supported to vote. In closing, let me say how lucky you all are to have the Texas Homeless Network to stand up for homeless people and programs in the state and nationally. They pull everyone together to identify needs and make sure that state and national, legislators are fully aware of what those needs are and that the network expects them to meet those needs. We at the Alliance are so proud to be your partners and honored that you have included us in this important event. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Daisy. I'm an advocate in the movement to end domestic violence and sexual violence. I've been doing this work now for 14 years, and I have the honor of working alongside great advocates of Friendship of Women in Brownsville, Tarrant County. I joined this work and I joined this movement in homelessness to be able to prevent situations in which families face homelessness, particularly those that are experiencing domestic violence and sexual violence. Now as an adult, I know that as a child, I grew up in a home that was not safe, that was not supportive, that was not healthy. But I know now in doing this work, and I believe very much so, that organizations like those that work within a homeless crisis response do the work in a way that is empathetic, in a way that is supportive, in a way that is caring, to be able to provide services to meet the needs of individuals. And for a victim experiencing domestic violence, there's a lot of reasons why they may not speak openly about what they're going through. That has to do because of the guilt and the shame that they carry. And so it's very essential that organizations provide spaces where there's non-judgment, where there are low barriers to access for services, and where there is that empowerment-based service model where we can support and lift up those experiencing crisis. And so I share this with the understanding that my situation, my experiences are not the same as others, but I can share that it is very essential that programs providing services to homeless individuals really create a space where survivors feel welcomed and supported to be able to leave that housing and to be able to leave that abusive environment and seek that safety that they need.
I'm Anthony Williams. I'm the mayor of Abilene, Texas. And I want to share with you our conversation and from that conversation, our results in regards to our neighbors who are homeless in Abilene, Texas. I'm in a very nice home in North Abilene that has all the amenities that often we take for granted, sitting here in the shade on the porch. The reality is that there are some of our neighbors who don't have an opportunity to have a home, who don't have some of those same amenities. And so 4 years ago, this community was involved in a number of very serious discussions about homelessness in our community. And more importantly, what could we do? We wanted to address some assumptions and stereotypes and wanted to get this community on the same page. And so the school district, the city, our hospitals, our police department, our fire department, our nonprofits, every stakeholder was part of this year-long conversation about homelessness in Abilene, Texas. And from that, we addressed some of those stereotypes. And one thing of many that stood out, that 2/3 of those who are homeless in Abilene, Texas, became homeless in Abilene, Texas. And so that began our journey. Abilene has a very strong tradition of supporting those men and women who protect and serve us. Camp Barkley in the 50s and Dice Air Force Base since the 60s. And so one thing that we identified first was, could we address homelessness for our veterans in Abilene, Texas? And the result is Abilene became the very first city in the state and the 9th in the nation that had an answer for veterans who are homeless. This created some enthusiasm and excitement and really brought to be the West Texas Homeless Network, who was the entity that led these conversations. And we have big aspirations. We really do. Our aspiration is, why can't we eliminate all homelessness in Abilene, Texas? And we're not there yet, but there is a commitment to do so, that we have an opportunity, that all of our neighbors have the same amenities and opportunities as I do. Sitting again on this nice porch in North Abilene. I'm proud of this community. I'm proud of the effort, but we've just began.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kristen Zakor, and I'm the Assistant Director of Data at THN. I'm here today to continue the conversation on the state of homelessness in Texas and offer up some data as well as provide some thoughts on how we can move forward together to end homelessness in Texas. First, let's talk about the point-in-time count, or PIT. The annual count takes place during the last week of January and helps communities identify how many people are experiencing homelessness in their area. While the PIT is not without its limitations, currently it is the best estimate of people experiencing homelessness across the United States. Now, a little data specific to the overall number of people experiencing homelessness in Texas. For 2019, we saw 25,848 people, and for 2020, we saw 27,229 people. These numbers reflect a 5% increase in people experiencing homelessness across Texas. This is a really important number to keep in mind as we approach the 2021 count. We are still in the midst of a global pandemic, one that has devastated many communities, especially our communities of color. The data shows us that our communities of color are disproportionately affected by homelessness, and the pandemic has only exacerbated existing needs and inequities caused by poverty, structural racism, and inequitable policies created by our governments. So what does all this mean, and how will it affect the 2021 count? Because of the pandemic, I anticipate an increase in needs related to housing, food security, and jobs, just to name a few. This also means that because of the crisis, many of our neighbors have the potential to become homeless or find themselves in an unstable housing situation. So in a few months, communities across Texas will participate in the annual PIT count to gather information on the state of homelessness in their area. But that being said, the PIT count is not enough. We know that we will likely see discrepancies in our numbers due to the uncontrollable circumstances because of COVID-19. I hope that communities use this moment as an opportunity to try new things, be flexible and creative, to ensure that we are accounting for all that are experiencing homelessness, and most importantly, find innovative ways to work together to create permanent housing solutions for all in need. In spite of our current situation, I'm hopeful for the future. I think it's important to remember that this work is up to us all. Whether you're part of the federal, state, or city governments, nonprofit or for-profit, we must stand together and create an interdisciplinary coalition to push for systemic and structural changes in this country. I believe that together we can make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. Thank you and take care.
Hi, y'all. I want to thank you for inviting me to join you virtually today. I so deeply appreciate what you do day in and day out for our community. This pandemic has exposed horrible injustices that have existed for so long in our community, and people have really been suffering, but folks experiencing homelessness so much more than the everyday person. And so for those of you who are on the front lines, helping make sure that we address this problem and this challenge alongside our neighbors, I just want to express my real admiration and thanks. I think our city here in Austin has taken a really critical step towards finally ending homelessness. When just over a year ago, we collectively declared what is common sense and true, and what we've always known in our hearts, but that is really hard sometimes for a community and a government to collectively declare, which is that jail is not a home. That jail does not help end homelessness, that in fact it makes things worse, and that punishment is not healing. It is not the compassionate or the right solution for addressing homelessness. On top of that, we also have the movement for Black Lives helping expose the overinvestment in mass incarceration and over-policing that has so often sucked away the resources that we so badly need to house people, to provide them the services that they deserve, and to provide people the help and support that every person needs in times of challenge and trouble. And so I think that those decisions, although they have been really hard and though they have been criticized from so many different angles, really put us on a path to being a city in a state like Texas that is truly committed to ending homelessness and not just to punishing people or hiding and pushing folks out into the shadows. I think that in this moment, folks like you and the stories that you can tell and the successes that you can bring are the most key part to actually making that strategy work. Because when I talk to everyday people, I think that they too know in their hearts that jail is not a home, but people doubt whether or not we can actually end homelessness. But the fact of the matter is, when we bring up the fact that modern day homelessness as we know it is not that old of a phenomenon, that in the early 80s, as the social safety net was shredded apart, we saw this spike in homelessness that we now know as modern day homelessness in our American cities. When people recognize that this is actually a newer phenomenon and that we can actually end homelessness, then there's hope, and I think there's real belief. And so it's up to us now in this moment to actually house thousands of people experiencing homelessness across our states and in our cities, and to show that home can actually work, and that a real response that is human-centered, and helping address the everyday needs of people can truly work, and that not only is it the right thing to do, but it's how we can address this issue for the entire community. So I'm so thankful to you all for that everyday work, and I hope that we can continue on this path of ending homelessness.
Hey y'all, my name is Tegan DeBrock. I'm a Vice President of the Home Center and a coordinator of the Hays County Local Homeless Coalition. In 2015, our community here in San Marcos, Texas was devastated by 2 floods. Without long-term plans or systems in place for collaboration among organizations, many people became homeless or rely on public housing options, still to this day, 5 years later. When the COVID pandemic hit, we still didn't have these plans and systems in place. Due to the pandemic, job insecurity has increased significantly, which can have huge consequences when a cut in your hours can mean the difference between living in an apartment or living on the street. Even the eviction moratorium didn't protect everybody. My nonprofit had a client who was sleeping on the couch of a generous family who was willing to share their space with him. Until COVID hit, they were fearing for their own health and safety and told him he needed to find a new place to live, but there was nowhere for him to go. We've seen a lot of support from our community, receiving thousands of dollars in donations and tons of donations of supplies and food, which we distribute multiple times a week to people living on the streets. But we need long-term solutions that address the root causes of homelessness, and we need to take a collaborative approach. That's why we're developing the Hays County Local Homeless Coalition, working with the Texas Homeless Network. This coalition allows us to map our assets and identify gaps in services. We're also developing a comprehensive casework management system and taking a housing-first approach, which will prevent existing issues from becoming more complex from the struggles of living on the street. Through our coalition, we also promote understanding and support for the diverse populations that exist within our community and work to prevent discrimination based on things like gender identity or sexual orientation. Addressing homelessness helps more than just people experiencing homelessness, because it takes such a high level of coordination. It fosters connections and collaboration among all types of entities like local governments, nonprofits, and schools across many issue areas like veteran services, youth services, and transportation. None of these long or short-term solutions are possible or efficient without proper funding and support from policy. That's why, with elections around the corner, we need representatives who support rent relief options and truly affordable housing solutions, and who will prioritize funding and support for homeless service providers. The longer the pandemic continues, the more devastating it becomes for our communities. That's why now it's so important to ensure funding and support for programs and systems needed to address homelessness. This year, we've adapted to the unique complexities of the COVID pandemic. Over this next year, we and communities all across Texas and the nation must come together and rise to meet the challenges of our time. Here in Hays County, we couldn't do it without the help of the Texas Homeless Network.
Hi everyone, my name is Lauren King and I'm the Interim Executive Director for Tarrant County Homeless Coalition. Thanks so much to THN for the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about our community. As we reflect on 2020, we can't help but think about COVID-19, a thing that has dominated everyone's minds and lives and has changed how we function as a community. For us, when I think about COVID-19, of course, we think about its impact on our community and definitely the impact on people experiencing homelessness. For us as a community, we were already a well-organized continuum and had all of our partners sitting at the table. And although I won't say anything about COVID has been easy, having all of our partners committed to our cause and moving forward together made it much easier for us to shift and really address issues that we may face. One thing I'm really proud of is that we came together as COVID was hitting, and within 5 days had stood up an overflow shelter so that our shelters could social distance. Because of this, I think our transmission rate has been low. We've seen very few people experiencing homelessness who have been impacted by COVID-19, and our partners have been committed to keeping safety their first priority. We went through the summer and I think we all thought that COVID-19 would be behind us and had high hopes that we would be looking at a different fall. But here we are, and it's fall, and we're still dealing with COVID-19. In addition to that, though, we are dealing with an abundance of resources. I think we have such a unique opportunity with all the resources coming into our communities. Our community specifically has committed to housing 500 people before the end of the year. So we've taken on the Housing 500.
Thank you to our speakers and our viewers for joining us today.
We hope this event...
Hi everyone, my name is Lauren King, and I'm the Interim Executive Director for Tarrant County Homeless Coalition.
Hey, I just wanted to take a minute to thank everyone working with the Texas Homeless Network in what is one of, if not the most trying...
Thank you to our speakers and our viewers for joining us today.
We hope this event offered a moment of reflection on all we have accomplished.
And all the work we have ahead to end homelessness.
Hey, I just wanted to take a minute to thank everyone working with the Texas Homeless Network in what is one of, if not the most trying years in our history as a state, as a country, as a people. I think about in the first month of the pandemic in El Paso, my wife Amy and I were volunteering at the food bank, and the lines for people waiting to receive a week's worth of groceries stretched 2, sometimes 3 miles long. Folks were getting in those lines at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And that was those who were lucky enough to own a car or to have a home, who, in other words, were not experiencing homelessness. And it really focused us on the fact that so many people are struggling right now and suffering right now and have lost so much, have lost a job, have lost a loved one in a state that has seen more than 16,000 killed by COVID. And the brunt of that borne not equally in the state. You look at the Rio Grande Valley, a community that's 95% Mexican American, space no longer available in the funeral homes and the morgues because people have died so quickly. They were stacking bodies in a refrigerated FEMA trailer. And I can only imagine what that is like to lose a family member, to not be able to honor them in the way that you would wish, to maybe not even see them in their last days or be with them after their death. And to also have lost your job and your source of income and your ability to keep a roof over your head. And the work that you do for those who are literally the most vulnerable among us is the most important work that I can think of. And I just wanted to say that we are grateful and we support you and we are with you. And my hope is that the work that we're all doing, organizing around these upcoming elections, and the fact that we're about to enter early voting, and we're just, a little bit more than a couple of weeks away from Election Day, that this is going to produce leaders in positions of public trust who understand how important this issue is, how important our fellow human beings, our fellow Americans are, and will be able to enact the policies and produce the funding necessary to help those who are in need, which, as you all know and can describe better than I or anyone else, not only helps those families experiencing homelessness, it helps all of us, and it certainly helps us to be stronger and better and healthier as a country. So know that we are grateful. Know that I have some reason for hope and optimism in these elections, given the work that we are all doing to make sure that we come through, and that really Texas helps to decide the future, the fate, the fortune of this country. And that after we have won, that really the work has just begun, and it then becomes incumbent upon each of us to hold one another accountable, especially those who've just been elected, to see this through. And I look forward to doing that work with you side by side. So grateful to you, sending you strength and best wishes and continued health and victory for us all on the evening of November 3rd. Thank you.
Over the past 20 years, THN has selected and presented awards to those making a remarkable difference in ending homelessness. We receive nominations from people all over the state, and we are honored to highlight the winners of the 2020 THN Awards today. So, without further ado, the recipient of the 2020 THN Award for Outstanding Community Service of the Year goes to Chris Baker, Executive Director of the Other Ones Foundation in Austin. For Outstanding Community Organization of the Year, we congratulate Good Neighbor Settlement House in Brownsville, Texas. For Outstanding Case Manager of the Year, we congratulate Justine St. Cyr from Galveston, representing the Gulf Coast Center. And the award for the Outstanding Journalist of the Year goes to Gus Bova from the Texas Observer. Each awardee has shown their unique, strong commitment to supporting and empowering those experiencing homelessness. From Chris Baker's commitment to offering low-barrier employment and community building at the state-sanctioned encampment in Austin, to Good Neighbor Settlement House's work navigating the refugee crisis and pivoting to COVID-19 response, to Justine's tireless work to providing support to those experiencing homelessness around the Gulf Coast, to Gus Bova's accurate, empathetic, and comprehensive coverage on the Austin encampment ordinances, each awardee demonstrates their work as a leader in Texas. We invited each person to have an opportunity to speak to their work struggles, successes, as well as their hopes for the future in ending homelessness. Let's hear from them now.
Hey friends, I am humbled and honored to be receiving the THN Outstanding Community Service Award for the work that we do and have been doing and plan to do here at the Other Ones Foundation. Fact is that most of the award belongs to our staff, who just every day put one foot in front of the other, trying to do the next right thing for all of our brothers and sisters that are out here experiencing homelessness. The Other Ones Foundation was created as a vehicle to build community for people experiencing homelessness. We have programs that are around creating income for people, offering employment, offering hygiene services, offering humanitarian aid. We have found ourselves at the center of a giant community out here in East Austin that's comprised entirely of people experiencing homelessness. And all of these sort of services that we do are all aimed at breaking down those barriers to stable income and stable housing. But I think that what's most important about what we do, and what should be the focus of social service in general, is creating community, being a support network to people. We know that there are all these contributing factors to homelessness, loss of job, and some people have substance use disorders, and some people have mental health disorders, and those could all be contributing factors. But we at the Other Ones Foundation believe that the real cause of homelessness is a loss of community, a loss of family, and so bringing to people community and bringing them a support network and showing them that there is a community that cares about them, and therefore a community that they can and should care about as well, is what the name of the game is about for us. We're about loving on people and trying to give them the best of ourselves, the best of what we have, and making some friends along the way. We just, right now, before we started shooting this video, one of the residents out here at Camp Esperanza approached us and accused us, that's all of the Other Ones Foundation, of being aggressively helpful and suspiciously happy, which I think is a good and apt description of us and what we do. Peace, thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Uwe Sita. I'm the Executive Director here at the Good Neighbor Settlement House. I want to thank the Texas Homeless Network and the community for selecting us as the 2020 Outstanding Community Organization. As many of you already know, COVID-19 has made us rethink a lot of the ways in which we do things here at Good Neighbor in order to keep our clients and volunteers and staff safe amidst the pandemic. We have continued to adapt to the challenges of a global health emergency that sometimes feels like it continues indefinitely. Like many nonprofit organizations, Good Neighbor has redirected its resources to continue serving our clients in the best way possible. Historically, food insecurity has been a chronic problem in Tarrant County. According to a pre-COVID-19 pandemic provided by Feeding America, 11.4 of our community's residents report food insecurity. Unfortunately, the pandemic has exerted that pre-existing problem, with the food insecurity rising since early 2020. With the support of our funding partners, community organizations, and good heart community members, Good Neighbor distributes over 400 bags of groceries to our clients each week. We also provide our community with nearly 1,500 hot meals on a weekly basis. All activities are conducted while practicing appropriate self-distance. We also added personal protective equipment like face masks and hand sanitizers to our toiletry items that we provide our homeless clients. Our food program and emergency supply distributors are serving thousands of clients monthly, including community residents who have lost their jobs or their homes as a result of COVID-19. In efforts to combat the new wave of homelessness and also assist community members transitioning back into self-sustainability, Good Neighbor strengthened the client service department. Experienced and proven case managers focus on timely case management, which includes direct connections to supportive services, employment, career certification, or other needs. Through these measures, our organization staff, volunteers, and partners are working hard to reduce the number of residents who are currently experiencing food insecurity, homelessness, or job insecurity. At Good Neighbor, our service as a whole creates a steady stream of activities. On any given day, you will serve clients coming to pick up their mail, work on their laundry, or get guidance in updating their resume. Said client may be a returning community member who is facing the challenges that come with trying to successfully rebuild their lives following a crisis in their lives. Good Neighbor will continue staying connected to our clients through our programs and services, and we will appreciate the ongoing connection and support from our volunteers and supporters. Our overall goal is to help our clients feel connected and cared for, especially during this difficult time. We want to say thank you, and we're here for them.
Hey everyone, my name is Justine St. Cyr and I work for the Gulf Coast Center. We are located all across Galveston and Brazoria counties, and I work there as a PATH case manager, which helps our homeless neighbors get into mental health services. A little bit about my work. I got into this position about 3 years ago in November after my boyfriend had experienced homelessness in Austin and Fort Worth and just all of the challenges that came with it. I still to this day credit him for me getting the job since I told his story in my interview. I am really passionate about it. I just want to provide a voice to those who don't already have a voice. I love working with our team and getting to go out into the community. I think that's really special. In addition to my regular work with our homeless, getting them into mental health services, one of the passions of mine that I've really enjoyed working on, last year I was the pit count coordinator for Galveston County, and I am renewing that role for 2021. I have always enjoyed event planning and just getting to do it for a good reason and for a homeless community made it even more special. I enjoyed working with all of our other community partners to make this event happen. And it's just a special process getting to see everybody so enthusiastic about making sure our homeless get counted so that way we can get our grant dollars. So special. Another one of the things that I've been doing is, since COVID began, my peer support specialist and we're going through our resource book from NAMI and realized we can't tell clients about this. We don't know what is open or who's doing what. So we decided to start the Galveston County COVID-19 resource book, where at first I was providing twice daily updates about who all was providing services at what times. And now it's gone down to once daily. It's gone beyond COVID-19. We're talking about resources for Black Lives Matter. We're talking about hurricane preparedness, just everything. Thank you so much for everyone who nominated me, and to those who were on the voting committee, and for Texas Homeless Network for making this possible. I really appreciate it. I couldn't have done any of this without the support of my amazing team here at Gulf Coast Center or any of my friends and family who are constantly supportive about what I do. So just thanks all around, and I appreciate it. See y'all later.
Hey y'all, this is Gus Bova with the Texas Observer. First, I just wanted to say I really appreciate, and it's an honor to get this recognition from a group so important as the Texas Homeless Network. I just wanted to share, I suppose, that I really started covering homelessness and the unhoused community in Austin last year when City Council changed some of its policies that punish behaviors that the unhoused engage in to survive, and that triggered a mostly right-wing backlash. And I was drawn to it because it was a hot topic at the moment, but actually more than that, it was that in the media coverage, I had a feeling that too often the unhoused were spoken about rather than spoken to. It seemed quite rare to me that unhoused folks were treated as experts on their own lived experience and people capable of analyzing the policies that directly impact them. So that was really what drove me to just go out, spend time in the camps around Austin, talk to people, come to understand why are you here instead of in one of the shelters? Why are you under this highway overpass instead of in the woods? Why is it important to you? Why is it valuable to you to be able to have a tent versus being just exposed, laying on cardboard or blankets or something like that? Those conversations helped me just understand the day-to-day experience of these folks, and being grounded in that, really, that I guess that's what's guided the coverage I've done on the issue and on this community. And it just leads you to some different conclusions, some different things you emphasize. And I think that if there's anyone listening who does, or maybe one day is going to practice journalism, that would be my bit of advice. Go right to the community themselves and take them seriously, listen to them, put them in the center of your work, and as always, keep a skeptical eye about the narratives coming from people with a lot more power than these folks have. I think that's the main takeaway for me, and so I'll just say again, thanks for this recognition. I really appreciate it, and I hope everyone's doing as well as can be.
I want to thank all of our awardees, and I want to thank you for all of the great work you're doing in your communities. And I want to thank all of you for the great work you're doing and for your advocacy, and for those that are going to become advocates or start doing this great work. We all share the same commitment, and that's to end homelessness in Texas. Now we're going to hear from some other people from around the state. But before we do, let me introduce you to one of our great THN board members, Joe Schaefer, who's going to share a personal story with you here today.
My name is Joe Schaefer, and I used to be homeless. Nearly every Thursday of my youth was spent playing piano at the local homeless shelter. That's where I first learned about shelters. It was the end of the fall break of my sophomore year of college, and I went to school out of state, and all my friends were going back to their various home states to celebrate the holidays, and I didn't really feel like I could go to my hometown. I had pretty rocky relationships with my family, and I had graduated early from high school, and so all my friends were still in high school, and I knew I would be the talk of the town. And I couldn't stay in the dorms, and I couldn't afford a hotel. So I thought I would just live in my car. But that first night, the temperatures were close to freezing. And I didn't know if we would survive. So I went to the shelter. I was 6 months pregnant. I had played piano at shelters, but I'd obviously never stayed at one, so I didn't really know what to expect. At that point, being an unwed, pregnant teenage girl, I thought people would be judgmental. But when I got there, they just gave me a lot of love. Since everybody was in the same situation, there was a lot of belonging and kind of a reprieve from the rest of the world. I wasn't there long. They gave me a caseworker, and the caseworker set me up with a family that volunteered to house me for the remainder of the pregnancy. Connected me with the adoption agency I ended up going through. I placed my daughter for adoption, and we have an open adoption. I still see her pretty regularly. And it's now 17 years later, and I guess I tell my story for two reasons. One, homelessness is absolutely a problem we can solve. We can end homelessness. And two, because mostly what that takes is every time we hear a story like this or see somebody suffering, at least for me, I have this sort of internal rumbling. And that rumbling asks me to do things. That voice asks me to volunteer at a shelter or give to Texas Homeless Network or just help that person who's suffering. And every time we listen to that voice, that's how we start. That's how we start. I now believe that that inner voice, that is home. That's what everybody's trying to find. That's home.
This is an extraordinarily challenging time. A global pandemic disproportionately harming and killing people of color, persistently high unemployment levels among low-wage workers, a president continuously stoking division and racism, using dog whistles to scare people about the very concept of housing our lowest income neighbors. And on top of a decades-long housing crisis, most harming extremely low-income people and people of color, we now have the newer threat of a tsunami of evictions when the CDC eviction moratorium expires this winter. It's very clear that if Congress doesn't act and act soon, we will face a housing and homelessness crisis in Texas and across the country unlike any we've seen in our lifetime. If nothing else, this pandemic drives home the truth that housing is healthcare. We won't truly contain the pandemic as long as hundreds of thousands of people are unhoused and unsheltered, and especially if we allow millions more people to lose their homes. So we have to do all that we can to prevent this wave of evictions. We have to work together and continue pushing Congress and the White House to implement a broad moratorium on all evictions for non-payment of rent for the duration of the pandemic, and to pair it with at least $100 billion in emergency rental assistance. We have to push them to provide $11.5 billion in funds for homeless shelter and service providers to keep people experiencing homelessness safe and healthy and to get them housed as quickly as possible. We can't accept anything other than success in this effort because the consequences of failure are too dire. And I know that we will be successful because of what we've already achieved together during the pandemic. When this crisis hit, homeless shelter and service providers, low-income renters, and their allies did inspirational and life-saving work. You worked to get unsheltered people moved quickly into safer settings. You worked to deconcentrate congregate shelters. Together we pushed Congress on the solutions, and we achieved $12 billion in funding for housing and homelessness needs and a partial eviction moratorium. Cities and states are using those funds to create emergency rental assistance programs. We told the stories of people facing eviction and got the federal government to implement a much broader, even if imperfect, eviction moratorium. We are so powerful when we fight together, and we have more fights ahead of us. We have so much work to do, even beyond this immediate crisis. I often think about an incident that happened in Las Vegas early in the pandemic. A local homeless shelter had to shut down after one of its staff contracted the coronavirus. And in response, they moved all the people who had slept in that shelter onto open air concrete slabs in a parking lot. These slabs were carefully placed 6 feet apart, and people slept on the concrete literally in the shadow of dozens of empty hotel buildings. And I think about this often, and I share it with all of you because it encapsulates so many things about our country's ongoing failure to do anything meaningful about homelessness, about the cruel and often dehumanizing ways that communities treat people experiencing homelessness, and about the work that we have to do towards long-term solutions, because this immediate housing crisis we are working to prevent sits on top of a long-standing and pervasive shortage of homes for the lowest income people. We had an affordable housing crisis before COVID-19 in Texas and throughout the country, and we will have it still after COVID-19. Unless we're willing as a country to make the kind of substantial investments needed in long-term solutions to end homelessness and end housing poverty, then we will face a similar eviction and homelessness crisis again during the next pandemic, or the next wave of this pandemic, or the next natural disaster, or even just during the next year, because we still will not have solved for the underlying shortage of homes affordable to the lowest income people. Allowing homelessness and housing poverty to exist in our country has always been a public policy choice, and we can choose differently. We have the data, certainly we have the solutions. As a country, we have the resources. The only thing we lack, what we have always lacked, is the political will to fund the solutions at the scale necessary. And this moment, when it's never been more clear that housing is healthcare, helps us to build that political will to achieve change. So thank you for all that you do to house people in Texas. Thank you for your tremendous work and advocacy over these last incredibly challenging months. We can't stop now. We have so much work to do, but I am certain that together we can and we will end homelessness and achieve housing justice once and for all. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rostin Callerman. I'm the Coalition Coordinator for West Texas Homeless Network in Abilene. So far this year with COVID-19, obviously we've had a lot of struggles, just like all of the other coalitions out here in the balance of state. Struggles with being able to communicate with our neighbors, being able to take care of our neighbors, being able to work together with our neighbors to help them get through their struggles. For our coalition, one of the biggest struggles that we've had is that we miss each other. We are a coalition that has been working closely together for several years, and beyond the work that we do, we've actually developed a lot of friendships across the coalition. We just don't get to see each other in person very often. We see each other on our Zoom calls, but we miss each other. Another struggle that we've had is that we have not ever had any city funding for our coalition's work. That's something that I'm really happy to say is starting to change, and we are starting to develop those partnerships with the city that we haven't had in the past. And hopefully in the near future, we'll have city funding. One of the biggest things that we're looking forward to and working towards in the future is that, you know, as everyone knows, with the CARES Act, there's a lot of federal funding floating around to do our kind of work. And one of our big goals is that we would like to use some of that federal funding as a catalyst to help staff and expand West Texas Homeless Network into a fully functioning coalition entity beyond just our work as a coalition, as a group of separate entities. If we're able to do this, I think that will really be something that pushes our organizations to the next level and helps us to make even greater strides than we've already made in our work to end homelessness in Abilene.
Hey everybody, Julie Oliver here, talking to you today about something I myself experienced as a teenager, homelessness. And in fact, I was a teen runaway, was gone for many, many months, slept in abandoned buildings, the occasional car until, somebody would find me out and I'd have to kind of scurry along and move to the next place. But this is a living reality for a lot of people. And for some people, going through this pandemic has exacerbated their financial circumstances. And while I live in a city that is trying to help people pay their rent, and there's a lottery system to apply for that if you're income eligible, there are far too many people who are experiencing homelessness. And I'll share a story of a woman I met last year when I was getting folks registered to vote. I asked her, she was standing next to her car, I said, "Do you want to get registered to vote?" And she looked at me and just paused, and her eyes got big, and she goes, "I don't have an address." And I realized in that moment, because I looked in her car, that she was living out of her car with 2 kids. And no mom should ever have to live out of their car. No person should have to live out of their car. Housing should be a fundamental right. So what am I looking forward to in 2021 when we have a Democratic president, an increase in the majority in the House, and a Democratic Senate? Working on affordable housing for folks, because it really should be a right in this country, one of the wealthiest countries in the world. And you cannot be safe and secure if you are not housed. And a lot of people are confused by what the Green New Deal encompasses. And yes, it is a jobs plan, creating millions of jobs in this new green energy economy. It is a climate justice plan, a racial justice plan, but it is also a housing justice plan. And the plan involves 7.5 million affordable housing units. There clearly is not enough supply, even in my own city. There's not enough supply. I think for every 4 families who are waiting for affordable housing, 1 unit is available. And I live in an increasingly unaffordable city. And there are a number of reasons for that, and we can tackle those as well. We don't have to do one thing at a time. We can multitask and get to the root of why there is a lack of affordable housing in my city. But this isn't just affecting the city I live in. It is affecting the entire 13 counties in which I want to serve in Congress. So it is a very serious issue. It needs to be met with somebody who has lived experience in this and knows what it's like to feel where you're going to lay your head any given night. And it is something that I know we can absolutely fix. We need the people who have the political courage to do it. So thank you for letting me share.
An average of 35% of residents in the Rio Grande Valley are below the federal poverty level. Many of our residents are facing housing instability at this time. We have been able to serve over 300 veterans annually. What Endeavors is doing is trying to identify every single veteran that is at risk of homelessness or is homeless. Once we identify the individual, we try to work with the veteran to ensure that they are stably housed. And by being stably housed, our case managers work directly with them and their family to ensure that no family goes hungry and no family is living on the streets. One success story is an individual who was a dishonorably discharged veteran and was experiencing homelessness at the time. This veteran was able to not only obtain 100% of his VA benefits, but the individual was also able to be stably housed and eventually was relocated and reunited with his family. Had several veterans who have gone from being homeless to actually being self-sustainable, having full-time jobs. So COVID-19 has greatly impacted the communities. Many of the individuals that we serve are at risk of homelessness for the very first time. The lack of employment opportunities currently and the lack of sustainable and affordable housing have become huge barriers to housing stability for our veterans. So currently, Endeavors is collaborating with community organizations in the area to help identify veterans experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. Together, we all collaborate to ensure that the veterans' needs are being taken care of. We also work collaboratively with our local Veteran Administration supportive housing programs to assist veterans in needs. This may include funding to provide more meals to low-income individuals experiencing homelessness, more affordable housing options, and financial assistance for those at risk of homelessness. There is still a gap in services. Service providers could definitely benefit from receiving donations. Veteran homelessness should matter to everyone. A person who took the oath to serve our country should not go hungry or homeless. As a community, it is our job to assist and provide the resources veterans need so they live in stable housing.
Hello, my name is Dr. David Woody, and I am the president and CEO of the Bridge Homeless Recovery Center in Dallas, Texas, and a member of the Dallas and Tarrant County Continuum of Care. Most of you would know that each guest engaged on our campus has a unique story and unique needs. At the Bridge, we facilitate recovery from homelessness, which means we engage nearly 800 guests daily, connecting them to a continuum of services on our campus and offer night shelter to nearly 300 guests each night. We now are faced with a challenge, COVID-19, and we are layering on top of this challenge racial injustice, which too often has contributed in some way, shape, or form to barriers our homeless guests learn to manage during their recovery pilgrimage. We are lucky to have remained a COVID-19 negative shelter. The key to tackling this challenge has been collaboration. We listened, we educated, we strategized, and we created change in the midst of a pandemic. But we first had to learn what we would need to change or adjust in order to keep our campus free of infection and spread through adding additional cleaning staff, purchasing personal protective equipment, and reducing the number of guests, unfortunately, on our campus. We also strategized with the City of Dallas on where those guests who were displaced across the homeless response system, where they would sleep at night. We identified the convention center as the location for day and night shelter for those guests, and thus we again created change. This year, we have faced another challenge, racial injustice. This is not new, but we are becoming more keenly aware of its impact, especially on our vulnerable homeless population. We continue to digest data acquired through surveys regarding homelessness in Dallas and to educate one another and to initiate doing something about the racial injustice that is intertwined in our work. On our campus, over 60% of guests we engage are African American, are Black. This number is staggering and needs further evaluation. Because of this, we have initiated a pilot program on our campus to educate our employees on how to provide our guests with opportunities to improve access to recovery-oriented services and create steps to eliminate barriers created by the systemic racism our guests experience. The Bridge is in a constant state of evaluating how to best serve our guests and accomplish our mission. And by doing so, we have continued to facilitate guests moving into a home of their own. During this season, we have recognized the power of communication and the need to truly listen, collaborate, adjust, and take care of the well-being of our guests and our campus, which serves as their home at this incredible time. I hope each of you and your guests are staying safe, learning, and growing during this unprecedented time. Together, we continue to make homeless recovery possible. Be well, and thank you.
Hi, my name is Kathy Lacey. I am the Prevention and Diversion Coordinator from the South Alamo Regional Alliance for the Homeless. And my journey with helping homeless veterans started back in 2013 when I began working for the American GI Forum as a case manager, trying to understand why we had homeless veterans when I know what the homeless veteran had done, the housing system had done for me as a veteran. So the community, we ended veterans homelessness in May or June of 2016, around that year. And since then, we've been able to stay above board just by providing services to those who were normally not able to receive it. And they still get the wraparound care. The South Alamo Regional Alliance for the Homeless and all of the partner agencies that work with veterans, the South Texas VA, the City of San Antonio. We have formed a veteran working group where we case conference those hard to match veterans with housing services, be it for criminal past or income, or even housing or rental history. We have been able to reach out to them and to get them stably housed through that case conferencing. It's been a really, really great feeling to be able to see that my brothers and sisters are getting what they need as part of a community that is focused on being Vet City USA, right? So Military City USA. It means something to me to be able to go out to my brothers and sisters through outreach and through coordination to make sure that even those who are not VA eligible or healthcare eligible are still able to get housed, so we can get them off the street and get them the care that they need to be continually sustainable. What I see next coming up, or what I'm hoping can be a precedent in San Antonio, is the way the community came together. We have systems that already been tried and true and proven to be effective through our Mayor's Challenge that we have been implementing still. We haven't stopped the fight in eliminating veteran homelessness. So we still have those systems in place, and welcome the challenge of going out again and digging deeper to find our brothers and sisters who may be displaced, and for those who need help, right, to get them immediately the help they need to get them housed and get housing stabilization and reunification for them and their families. That's the plus of this community, that we're always going to pull together to help not just our veterans, but everyone to be able to call their house their home. So thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Erica Thomas, Executive Director of Odessa Links here in Odessa. So a little bit about Odessa. We have had our challenges like many of you across the state. We have seen an increase in unemployment rates. We have seen an increase in food insecurity, an increase in evictions and families doubling up as a result of losing their housing or stability. We have also seen a drop in oil prices and a decline in our economy. All of these things, what we have seen is that no matter your privilege, no matter your cultural advantage or generational wealth or overall stability, we're all a paycheck or a pandemic away of potentially being homeless. And I think it's in that vulnerability that unites us. And through all that, we've seen some really incredible work and volunteers and people step up to the challenges, our first responders, our health workers, our educators. And so my hope in all of this is that in the future, we continue with that momentum and that unity to help one another. My hope is that in seeing that vulnerability across our community, that we will see more second chance approaches and just overall second chance systems that will, give people opportunities even though their background is not the most desirable, or credit history isn't the best, or renter's history. A second chance approach will be needed in the future. And my hope is in all of this that we will see our community and the state rise to the occasion to help the people that we serve. Thank you.
Hey y'all, I'm Congressman Will Hurd from the 23rd Congressional District of Texas, and I just want to thank all y'all at the Texas Homeless Network for shining a light on the issue of homelessness. I don't have to tell you how homelessness in our state and across the nation continues to affect so many children, veterans, and adults. The National Alliance to End Homelessness says 26,000 Texans are homeless on any given night. I've learned from many of y'all that to address this problem, we need to have community-wide and coordinated approaches to delivering essential services beyond just housing. Connecting people experiencing homelessness to essential services provides a platform from which they can address other areas that may have contributed to their homelessness, such as unemployment, health issues, and substance abuse. The COVID-19 pandemic has made matters worse, but through the CARES Act, we've been able to provide $7.4 billion for homeless and assisted housing programs like the Housing Choice Voucher Program. Mental health resources and recovery programs that combat addiction are another crucial facet in combating homelessness. Tragically, homelessness and addiction go hand in hand. The result of homelessness is often substance abuse, and substance abuse often contributes to homelessness. Recently, the University of Texas at El Paso received a $1 million grant to continue pursuing ways to beat back the opioid epidemic in our West Texas counties. They are trying to prevent this crisis from claiming more lives and putting others out on the streets. We have seen grant programs like this succeed in finding solutions to this problem, and I want to make sure that federal support continues to go to programs at the forefront of treating mental illness and substance abuse. To all the Texas housing authorities, volunteers, and nonprofits who battle homelessness in our state every day, you all make such a difference in our communities. You do this by giving a voice to the voiceless, hope to the hopeless, and empowerment to those who feel powerless. Thank you for allowing me to be part of this year's event. God bless you all, and let's keep fighting.
Hello, I am Bob Salos. I'm the Director of Neighborhood and Family Services for the City of San Angelo and currently the Chair of the Concho Valley Homeless Planning Coalition. I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about homelessness here in San Angelo and the Concho Valley. In case you've never heard of San Angelo, we are a city of about 100,000 located in West Texas, an hour and a half from Abilene or Midland and Odessa, as the crow flies, if you will. Like most cities across the nation, our homeless population has tended to fluctuate somewhat, with the numbers ebbing and flowing based on circumstances. We started seeing an increase from 2016, reaching a high of 373 in 2019, only to see a sharp decline to about 70 this year, and that was due mostly to the closure of our emergency shelter. Unfortunately, the city does not have a dedicated staff or budget to manage homelessness issues. So we rely on the local homeless coalition to help come up with solutions the best we can. With the understanding that we won't solve homelessness entirely, our LHC has been able to carve out some programs using funding from various sources. And these are a few of those programs. We have Out of the Code, which allowed us to shelter over 100 individuals when the winter temperatures reached 34 degrees Fahrenheit or colder. We have COVID Quarantine Program that's allowed us to provide room and board for the duration of the quarantine period for 11 homeless individuals who in need of isolation based on medical referrals. We have Project ID, which has helped 253 homeless individuals obtain identification documents like state IDs, driver's license, birth certificates. One of our homeless coalition member organizations built new transitional housing for homeless families and with children, and they provided housing for 7 families up to 18 months. And our crown jewel, the Rapid Rehousing Program, provided permanent housing for 89 homeless individuals for the past couple of years. And we were lucky to get a COC grant to expand our Rapid Rehousing Program to add case management and additional TBRA. And we will be establishing a coordinated entry process as part of that grant. Of course, like the rest of the country, we have huge challenges in front of us. For example, trying to reopen our emergency shelter is one of those challenges. We need more permanent and transitional housing, either renovating existing facilities or building new facilities. We need additional case management. and we have to deal with the veterans' homelessness problem. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but the lack of funding is our biggest obstacle to meeting the needs of our homeless population. Thank you.
Hey y'all, I'm Emily Schaefer Northrup, and I'm the Homeless Outreach Coordinator for the City of Corpus Christi. I'm also a newly elected member of Texas Homeless Network's Balance of State Continuum of Care Board of Directors. I am thrilled to be a part of this event, and I want to say thank you to everyone who took the time to join us today for this conversation about homelessness in Texas. I work to end homelessness in Corpus Christi, which is the largest city in the Balance of State. My hometown, probably like yours, has struggled with inadequate resources, unaffordable housing, and inaccessible health care before COVID-19 hit. And the pandemic has only exacerbated systemic inequalities that those of us who work with Texans who are experiencing homelessness know already exist. Now, in the face of a looming rent crisis and at a time when more Texans than ever need assistance, it is imperative that we find creative and collaborative ways to step up and manage the fallout from this public health crisis. I am so proud of my partners in Corpus Christi who have risen to meet the challenges presented by COVID-19. Groups like the Salvation Army of the Coastal Bend, Metro Ministries, Corpus Christi Hope House, Catholic Charities of South Texas, and Endeavors are working together every day to make sure that the needs of the most vulnerable Texans in our community are met with dignity and compassion. I think that it's safe to say the last 8 months have not been easy for any of us, but they have hit Texans who are experiencing housing instability and homelessness particularly hard. If you are privileged enough to have disposable time or income, please consider supporting the work of Texas Homeless Network and its partners in your community as they take strides toward making sure that homelessness in Texas is rare, brief, and non-recurring.
Hello, Texas Homeless Network. Homelessness is a problem with a solution, and the solution is permanent housing. Some of the struggles that we've seen in our community have been the multiple theories on what works and doesn't work for those who are experiencing homelessness, like let's enhance our emergency shelter system, let's build more transitional programs. Rapid rehousing does not work for the chronically homeless. Change is difficult, but we need to continue the successes we've seen. Allowing someone in emergency shelter for 15 plus years is unacceptable. We can do better. We have all seen many successes in our community, including mine. Permanent housing interventions such as rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing programs have worked hard in completely bringing down those barriers. Our caseworkers have made strides in housing the chronically homeless in midterm rapid rehousing programs. For our RRH program to have success stories among our chronically homeless population is amazing and exciting. Our permanent housing interventions are focused and guided on the belief that people need basic needs like food and a place to live before attending to anything less, such as getting a job, such as getting identification, attending to substance use disorders, or mental health conditions. Let's continue to focus on building a road home for our unhomed. Let's give them hope. Let's grow our permanent housing interventions exponentially. Let's all be on the same page so we can be effective in addressing our unhomed. Thank you.
My name is Officer Kyle Moore with the Killeen Police Department here in Killeen, Texas. I currently run the homeless outreach team. Now, some may look at me and be like, whoa, what's this officer doing talking to us about homelessness? You know, usually when you think about officers and homeless, it's like a negative connotation. Well, I want to make it clear that being homeless is not a crime, all right? I want to stress that. Being homeless is not a crime. That being said, I think it's important that law enforcement gets involved with addressing homelessness. What we've been able to do with our homeless outreach team is proactively address the needs of the homeless and the city in a efficient way, meaning we're not just taking people to jail. What I've been able to do, and a lot of people kind of call me like a social worker, police officer, is proactively address the needs of each individual person. Whereas a police officer goes call to call to call to call, I have the ability to now work one-on-one with addressing the reason why that individual may or may not be homeless. I love this job. Been able to meet some very, very unique, cool, wise people that are often forgotten. Since 2018, I think we've been able to make contact with over 500 homeless people and provided services through our program to maybe 200 to 260 individuals, ranging from ID cards all the way to the actual goal, housing. I think it's important, and like I said, I've been blessed to be in this position. 2020 has kind of brought us a lot of confusion and a lot of turmoil with dealing with the global pandemic, COVID-19. We saw wages, we saw jobs being lost, we saw housing being lost. But through some creative opportunities with working with all our community leaders, community organizations, our homeless outreach teams, our coalitions, our hospitals, things of that nature, we've been able, I think we're on the uptick. We're making our way out of homelessness. The ultimate goal, what we always say, is we want homelessness to be rare, brief, and not reoccurring. I think we're getting there, and I refuse to let 2020 end on an end note, on a bad note. We're going to end on a positive note, and we're going to rock it to 2021.
Well, I'm thankful to the Texas Homeless Network for the work that they do and this opportunity just to speak on behalf of the city of Amarillo. Some of the challenges and successes that we've had in fighting the problem and fighting homelessness in our city. We have had some challenges, and just digging in hard on it the last 3 years or so. The problem of homelessness is it's sort of like taking care of things around your house. I mean, you do the laundry, it gets done, and then a couple of days later it needs to be done again. And the same thing with buying groceries or mowing the lawn. And so it's not like putting out a fire where it's out and then that problem, that particular fire is solved. It's an ongoing amorphous issue that involves a lot of different people. And each one of them has individual needs and expectations that can't be cookie cuttered and solved with just one approach or even one touch. You've got to touch them a lot of times in order to help them get to a stable place and possibly get to where they don't need any touches going forward. So just recognizing and educating our community that it's not making a check out one time, it's not volunteering just one time, but it actually is an ongoing need that you have to continue to touch and work on, is something that's, I think, one of the challenges. Funding is always a challenge. There's always a need for more funding. But also just getting people educated so that they understand the types of problems that are involved, that it's not just mental health, it's not just addiction, it's not just finances or education, but that all of these, each individual person may have several of those factors playing into their situation that causes them to live in homelessness. So we have had some successes here in Amarillo, and I'm very glad for that, as we began our Coming Home program, which is a housing first model. So we're using federal dollars to create those housing opportunities. And then as people move into housing, we have ongoing relationship with them with 2 social workers who work for our city. And those social workers can then build relationship, be multiple touches, and those opportunities to say, what else do you need? Can we fill out a job application? Can we get you to see a doctor? What other things do you need? And once people are in housing, for many of them, they're willing to have those conversations. There are still people in our community that feel strongly that anyone with an addiction just has to be at rock bottom and not in a house in order to get that turned around. So there again, we're back to a challenge because there's sometimes different opinions or ideas on how homelessness needs to be solved. But our future hope is that we can continue working together as a city, trying new innovations, working with programs that have had success in the past, and layering those approaches so that as a city we have success. But the most important thing is individually we're reaching each individual person and meeting their needs. And I think that's part of the challenge, but also part of the hope that it gives us going forward, because this problem is ultimately about people who need to be brought back into our community. And we the ones in the better position to do that, have to figure out the right ways to do that. So thanks again to the Texas Homeless Network, all the work that you're doing. We appreciate the support and the partnership, and that's how things are going here in Amarillo.
Hi, I'm Vanita Burr with Safety Crisis Center in Mount Pleasant, Texas. I'm here today to talk about homelessness in our area. Since the COVID pandemic began, our calls to our hotline increased by 75% of victims of domestic violence seeking shelter. And one of the hardships we have in this area is that we have a limited supply of safe shelter, a limited supply of affordable housing as well. And on a daily basis, I'm creatively thinking of how to overcome that. Just affordable housing in itself, safe, clean, affordable housing is very hard to come by in this area, and we service an area of 9 counties at this time. Although we do have those hardships that we're trying to overcome, we've also had a lot of successes this year and been able to implement new programs throughout our community. One of the programs is our Survivor's Choice program, where we focus on keeping families together and providing them with financial and supportive services for 12 months. Another program that we were able to implement this year is a Safe House program. We have a safe house where a family can go, not in a shelter environment, but in a individual single family home environment. And we're looking to increase the number of safe houses we have throughout our community. We've also been able to increase the amount of legal services that we offer. Although we're fighting every day to overcome those challenges that we have, it is a great feeling when we're also able to have successes. Thank you.
Thank you to our speakers and our viewers for joining us today.
We hope this event offered a moment of reflection on all we have accomplished
and all the work we have ahead to end homelessness in Texas.
No matter your role in this work, we at Texas Homeless Network couldn't do it without you.
It's our service providers, our government partners, and our neighbors across the state
who help us work to end homelessness every day.
If you're able, please donate now to THN to support our advocacy work, or donate directly to our agency partners across the state.
A $20 donation today can make a huge impact on the advocacy work that we do on the ground to protect the health and safety of those experiencing homelessness in our state.
We look forward to the year ahead, working alongside all of you.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Gracias.
We cannot thank you enough.
Thank you for your commitment.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you for helping us end homelessness.
Thank you.
Thank you for supporting Texas Homeless Network.